Hello, everyone. Today we'll be talking about Plymouth, Massachusetts, and different events that happened in Plymouth, Massachusetts that reflected cultural clash and diversity, and how this cultural clash and diversity was managed at these two different times. Here is the agenda for the presentation, a little introduction, then we'll talk about the Thanksgiving feast of 1621, then we'll talk about King Philip's War of 1675, and then we'll have a conclusion. Now, who were the colonists and who were the Native Americans? The colonists were Europeans that came over on the Mayflower, some of them on the Mayflower, some of them on other ships to come to the New World, to the Americas. And as they kept coming, they formed a community, and this community met with other Native Americans who were previous inhabitants of this land. And when this happens, there is sure to be conflict or clash of different societal values and ideologies. Now, who were the Wampanoags? The Wampanoags were a set of people that lived in the western side of Massachusetts. They were very agricultural. They did a lot of hunting. They lived in this kind of house called Iwitu. And here you can see a man in his native regalia. Who were the colonists? The colonists and pilgrims were people that arrived the New World on the Mayflower. They were Englishmen and women who some were escaping persecutions and the others just came there to find a better life in the New World. As news of abundance in the New World began to grow, more and more people started to come to the New World. Now, in the feast, on this Thanksgiving feast of 1621, the people eat together, they enjoyed themselves. It was actually in the autumn. The pilgrims set out to thank God for the good harvest that they had gotten, and they had some recreational activities as well as eating and enjoying in their harvest. And during one of these harvests, the Wampanoags and some of their people came to join them to celebrate, and there was sharing, there was cordial relationships between them as they shared their meals. Here you can see an image, but this image does not do great justice to show us what it could have looked like back then, but it's a very great image and it helps us visualize what would it would have looked like. Now, how was diversity managed in this situation? During the first arrival of pilgrims onto Massachusetts, there was still some tension between both groups, that's the Wampanoags and the pilgrims. The Europeans had taken some of their homes and had displaced them in some way, but mutual participation and sharing of crops and agricultural produce was very common. The manner of complementary and aiding relationships between these groups with diverse views and cultures helped conflict resolution and peaceful cohabitation. They were friendly, they were cordial, they related well with each other despite the fact that they had different views. Now we're going to talk about another event which happened in 1675, still in Plymouth. It's called King Philip's War. Now, despite the fact that they had previously had friendly relationships, because because of the death of a few men, the people of the Wampanoags were angry, but that cannot be said to be the only cause of this uprising. Also, the Europeans had come in more and more droves and had taken a lot of their land and displaced them. So when some of these pilgrims convicted and killed three Wampanoag men of murder. They had convicted them and then they were killed. The Wampanoags were angry and tried to rise up and fight back against this oppression they faced. Now, in this situation, diversity and cultural clash were managed or was managed through conflict because these people did not see eye to eye and they felt that they had been maltreated in some way. They took up arms and began to fight each other. And there was damage and destruction on both sides. The pilgrims lost lives, lost family, lost property, and they were displaced. The Wampanoags also were displaced from their homes, many of them having to migrate to other locations in the United States. Now, concluding views. Differences in culture. We note that there were differences in culture, but despite their differences in culture, they were able to find uniting ties in food and in having a meal. Despite their different languages, different customs, they were still able to find uniting ties. Second one is conflict resolution methods. Here we see that they resolve their conflict through war and battle, but that should not always be the case. We should always try our best to look for peaceful conflict resolution methods. And the third one is benefits of cordial relationships with people in the society. When the two groups were living together, cohabiting together, there were no deaths, there were no displacements, and people were generally happy. So we should learn to live with good faith and with good relations with those around us. Here is the works cited page, all the primary sources and secondary sources. Thank you all for listening to me today.